How are we doing, Jets fans? I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation.com. I'm here today again this week with Chris Schubert of the Draft Network. Chris does a weekly show that you should be checking out on the Draft Network, TDN Daily. And actually, you did a show the other day, Chris, that I listened to, and this is completely out of left field because we didn't discuss this pre-show, but
Okay.
I'm sure you did the show about the 49ers quarterback room.
Yes.
And so I wanted to touch base with you because, of course, our old friend Sam Darnold is there. And they're saying he'll get reps in the Trey Lance thing. What are your thoughts on Darnold? Is he going to be another quarterback that finds his way under Shanahan? And, Jets fans will, I think, wrongly regret the trade and, we shouldn't have done this. But, the guy just has a way of working with quarterbacks that most guys don't. What are your thoughts there? I know your thoughts on him versus Lance and who gets the reps while Purdy recovers and all that. But Darnold and San Fran, good fit or no?
Yeah, I like the fit a lot. I think it's a system that is going to ask him. It's not going to ask him to do too much because they haven't asked any of their quarterbacks to do too much. Like some of the names, Nick Mullins, C.J. Beathard, Jimmy Garoppolo, they're not asked to do a lot. They're asked to operate within the constructs of the offense. They're giving great playmakers that can do a lot for them, and they're asked to just make the easy, quick throws. And I think Sam can do that. And so the big takeaway that I had from the signing is the San Francisco 49ers do not want to be in a situation that they were in a year ago where they had to turn to Mr. Irrelevant. No offense to Brock Purdy. I am personal friends with Brock Purdy's high school quarterback coach that he trained with outside of being here in Gilbert, Arizona. I know the work that Brock has put in to being a quarterback, but I don't think San Francisco going into that year was like, hey, we're going to turn to Brock Purdy. We're going to win every game of the regular season when he comes in, and we're going to have a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. That's not the design of what they want to do. So I think bringing in Sam, giving him first team reps, is just an extension of we want everybody on our team, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, everybody that makes up our quarterback room. We want to feel extremely comfortable that they can go in and run our offense. And so that is why I think they're giving Sam the first team reps. Not because he's going to be the incumbent starter. I still think that's going to be Trey. And then when Brock is healthy, Brock's going to be the guy. How can you not give the job to Brock considering what he did a year ago? So I think there was a little bit overblown about that, but I love the fit. I think Sam will fit that role perfectly in San Francisco.
And that allows us a perfect segue into a topic that it's a hot topic this week because of Robert Saleh's comments in Arizona at the owners' meetings. Discussed on a couple of other pods this week, but wanted to get your thoughts. The possibility of Zach Wilson legitimately, credibly being this team's number 2 quarterback, something I would have thought weeks ago was impossible and no way in the world. But now as we look at the free agent market, the best guy out there is Teddy Bridgewater. After that, you've got Carson Wentz and Trevor Siemian. Not a lot of good options. You and I discussed Rippon, of course, who played for Hackett last year in Denver. Not a guy that inspires a ton of confidence, but he knows the offense. But really, the options are drying up, and it's not as if we've heard anything about the Jets approaching Teddy Bridgewater. So, yeah. Zach Wilson, QB2, good or bad?
Probably bad. I'm not surprised that the Jets are sticking by Zach and having him be on the roster. I think there was a bit of media overblowing the idea that the Jets were going to just completely cast away and completely move on from Zach Wilson. It doesn't make sense from a financial perspective, considering the money that they've had to dole out on his rookie contract. It would actually cost them more to have Zach Wilson off the roster in 2023 than it would to have him on the roster in 2023. So it always made sense to me that he was going to be on the roster. And when you look at it from the context of who they're acquiring, who they're going after at the quarterback position, they're going after a 39, about to be 40-year-old guy who is 90% retired going into this offseason. Do we really think that Aaron Rodgers is going to play with a ton of confidence beyond 2023? No. So they're going to stick by Zach, and I think they believe that 2023 can be a mental reset year for Zach, and then he can pick things up in 2024 where he left off and hopefully can fix some of the things that were going wrong behind the scenes. Now, I will tell you, that was what I believed. I never envisioned that included him being the QB2, being the backup quarterback for this team. I always thought it was as a QB3, allowing him to just completely not be asked on a weekly basis to even have the slightest hint of being able to be in the game. Now, I will tell you, it's March 31st. Let's see what this roster looks like when we open the season in September. Let's see what this roster looks like when training camp begins. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another quarterback brought in. I think Brett Rippon makes the most sense from the context of his connection with Nathaniel Hackett, his understanding of the offense, of what they want to do. That's been the Jets' MO. They always go for the connections. Who on our coaching staff has a connection to somebody else that can understand what we're trying to do? So to me, that does make a lot of sense. But really, I mean, if Aaron Rodgers goes down for any stretch of time, this whole experiment's over. It's done with. So it won't matter at that point who the backup quarterback's going to be, because again, all of the eggs are in the basket of Aaron Rodgers is going to lead this team to the heights that they think they could reach in 2023.
And that's part of why it surprises me so much, because as you said, by doing what they're doing with Aaron Rodgers, like there is the remote chance he'll play more than 1 year. But as I've said on many shows before, you have to approach this as if it's a 1 year rental, meaning this is an all in for one season. And to do that and then potentially have Zach Wilson as your QB2. And listen, I get the coaches lie about this stuff all the time. Robert Saleh, his comments just jumped out at me though, because he said that he made the expected comment of Zach's our QB2 for now. And you hear that and you go, well, yeah, for now. But then he cuts himself off and says, oh, that's going to be the story that I said for now. What I should have said is Zach is our QB2. And that was a little bit more firm. And, we've heard that they want to be careful with Zach's psyche and they don't want any more ups and downs. So I was just surprised he came out that strong saying Zach's our number 2 guy. Because as you said, Rodgers misses a stretch of time. Season's over. They're giving themselves a 1 year window to do something, and that window shuts the second Rodgers misses time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's very clear to anybody that has observed the way that they've handled this that they still believe in the talent of Zach Wilson. They believe in what the ceiling could be for Zach Wilson. The floor's not where it needs to be right now. He's not playing the way they expected him to right away. But I don't think the belief inside that building is that we're going to move on from Zach Wilson. I think the going after Aaron Rodgers is completely indicative of the fact that they feel that Zach can be their quarterback moving forward, and they are just trying to extend their window now to potentially win, potentially save their jobs and give themselves another opportunity to try it with Zach down the road. But nothing about any of this has ever screamed that Zach Wilson wasn't going to be on the Jets roster in 2023. Now, I am extremely skeptical of the idea of him being the backup quarterback because I just don't think that's good for him. But listen, if this is the path they want to go down, I'm of the belief that, again, that if Rodgers gets hurt in any capacity, it doesn't matter who the backup is. It's probably not a good thing for the New York Jets, and their season's probably over at that juncture.
Yeah, as I've said, yeah, I think they could survive a few games, but a long stretch with Zach. What I should say, I think they could survive a few games with a guy like Bridgewater, with a guy maybe a Rippon.
But that's two or three games max. Like that's the max you're putting on it. If Rodgers misses 6 to 8 weeks for something, and by the way, I'm old enough to remember when the Jets traded for a Green Bay Packer quarterback and they started the year really well, and then that guy got hurt. Right? We could all remember that's occurred. So this is not something that we're just pontificating out of thin air. Right? This is a real thing. If they have if Rodgers misses 6 games, it's over. It doesn't matter who the backup is. It's not going to matter.
And the funny thing there is that that guy was a guy, because I when I mentioned this in a tweet a few weeks ago saying this would be malpractice in my eyes because it reminded me of the Vinny Testaverde year when he was hurt and there was no viable backup, and somebody said, well, Rodgers doesn't get hurt, and I thought, well, neither did Brett Favre. He was Mr. Iron Man. He was Mr. Durability. Well, he may have stayed on the field, but he stayed on the field hurt. Clearly wasn't the same guy, and that season went off the rails in a hurry. And as I said the other day, you can be the most durable quarterback that's ever lived. All you got to do is slam your thumb on someone's helmet throwing a pass, and next thing you're out 4 or 5 weeks. That's all it takes. And this is a guy who just had a thumb injury.
Right. I was just going to say the guy just played through a thumb injury and didn't play very well. Last season. I'm not even going back that far. I'm going back to last year in which he had a thumb injury that everybody is pointing to the reason why he deteriorated as a quarterback and didn't live up to the back-to-back MVP seasons. So he might play, but is he going to be 100%? And oh, by the way, I'm sorry, Jets fan over here worried that potentially a guy who's never missed games in his career could come to the Jets and get hurt. You're right. You know what? I've got no history of that ever happening to the New York Jets. It's never happened.
Exactly. Yeah. Only the best. Only the best luck for the Jets. It's crazy. And like I said, I couldn't believe somebody said that to me. He's durable. He doesn't get hurt.
You're right. Because as a Jets fan, you've never had that happen before.
Well, we just saw it. Favre feels like it was 10 minutes ago, but it wasn't. But anyway, so of course there's going to be the conversation about the weapons around him. If and when Aaron Rodgers arrives, what are your thoughts as far as the receiving core goes? There's all this talk about OBJ. This surprises me. I said to someone the other day, the thought of OBJ and Aaron Rodgers, what surprises me about both these moves, they're both very anti-Joe Douglas. Douglas is like a young character guys build through the draft. And now we're talking about trading away potentially very valuable draft picks for 1 year rental on an old guy and then bringing in another guy who was like on video screaming at airplane passengers a few weeks ago because he was asked to leave, and he's calling everyone fat and ugly and get off the plane and leave me alone. And now this is the guy they want to bring. I get that it's not football related, but it is character related. And Joe Douglas has seemed to be like high character, use the draft picks, and both these big moves that seem to be really on the verge of happening are the anti-Joe Douglas, basically.
Well, I don't think it's not telling that both of those moves haven't happened yet, right? Because of the way Joe Douglas operates. Joe Douglas, what did we learn since the last time you and I sat down here and talked, Glenn? That the holdup on the deal between the Green Bay Packers and the New York Jets is Joe Douglas and company are uninterested in trading 2 second-round picks unless there is some sort of guarantee from Aaron Rodgers that he's going to play beyond 2023. And they're also saying, you know what, we're going to put you want us to put conditions on the trade on our end of it scales as Aaron Rodgers plays? Guess what? Well, we're going to put conditions on it on our end that if Aaron Rodgers isn't on this team in 2024, we want some compensation back. So again, all following the motif of the way Joe Douglas operates. And again, I will remind everybody, Odell Beckham Jr. is not a member of the New York Jets yet. I still think he will be, but he's not right now. The trade with the Green Bay Packers for Aaron Rodgers hasn't happened yet. Why? Because Joe Douglas is a very principled man. He understands the way he wants to run this team, the way he wants to allocate resources, whether it's dollars and draft picks. He allocates them in a very specific way. Odell Beckham Jr. wants $50 million a season. I'm here to tell you, Joe Douglas isn't going to give him $50 million a season. It's not going to happen. And that's why the holdup's there, because Joe's like, no, we're not doing it. You want to be on the team? Great. We'd love to have you, but it's going to be at this number, not this number. And so I get it. I can understand why it's kind of counter, but also there's a reason why these things haven't happened yet. It is because they are still operating with that same mindset that has put them in this position. And again, this is still a team that's got a ton of draft picks in this year's draft class. They just added another second-round pick for this year. So they've got 1-1 and they've got 2-2s as of this moment. They haven't traded any of those picks away. So they're still operating with that same idea of building through the draft. So I get it. I can understand why it looks counter to the way Joe does things, but these moves also haven't happened yet. So it's tough for us to judge without understanding what exactly is going on.
And what do you think happened? What would be, in your mind, an acceptable trade package? For my money, 2-2s for a potential 1-year rental is overpaying, but it looks like that might be the deal that's going down, even if there is a pick coming back the other way. What type of deal would make you comfortable that you can say that's fair for both sides?
Yeah, I'm uninterested in touching either of the 2 second-round picks, and I know that I'm probably going to lose that battle. I certainly think at least one of them is going to be in there in this deal. I would trade a 3 this year, and I would trade a 3 next year. So I'd give you a 3 in 2023, and I'd give you a 3 in 2024, and I'd put the scale on the 2024 pick, where if the Jets make it to the Super Bowl, we can make that 3 a 1. We can make that 3 a 2. We can scale it up that way, because I am not giving you my first round pick or second round pick in this year's class when I still need to build a roster around Aaron Rodgers. I'll give you 3 because I'm still picking 3 times in the first 2 days. I'm still getting a ton of talent.
You don't have that 3 anymore. You got to get another 3.
But I'd have 2 2s. I'd have a 1 and 2 2. So I'd be picking 3 times over the first 2 days, albeit not in all 3 rounds. But and then I would scale the 2024 pick based on the production that is met in 2023. That's the way that I would do it. So I would base it as 2 3s, a 3 this year with no conditions on it. You're just getting a 3, and I'd give you a 3 in 2024, and I put conditions on that. If the Jets make the playoffs, it can become a 2. If the Jets win the Super Bowl, it can become a 1. Those are just basic, and I'm sure they've got even more conditions that they can put on it. But that's a basic framework that I'd be comfortable with.
So I take it you're saying you would turn one of the current 2s into a 3, since the current 3 went to Cleveland for Elijah Moore.
If I traded a 3, I've traded a 3 away, right? And so I can move one of the 2s, or I can find another trade and do something like that, or I could trade a 4 and scale. I could do a bunch of different things in order to get it. But that would be in terms of value from if you use a pick chart and added it all up, I'm comfortable giving a 3 this year and a 3 next year, and I'd put the scaling slide on the 3 next year based on the production of the New York Jets, how well they do. Because again, it gives the Green Bay Packers assets right now, but also it gives them a reason to basically root for the New York Jets to be successful in 2023, because it allows them. And I'm here to tell you, if the New York Jets win a Super Bowl in the season 2023-2024, I don't think there's going to be a single Jet fan that's going to be like, I wish we were picking 32nd. I wish we had the 32nd pick. So guess what? Put the conditions on that end of the pick. Don't put the conditions on the front end of the pick. So that would be the framework that I would do. But I would do everything in my power to keep the current picks that the Jets have on the first 2 days.
Yeah, I've said before that I would be more than happy to be wrong about my apprehensions about the Rodgers deal. I mean, listen, of course I would like Aaron Rodgers to be this team's quarterback. But what scares me and has scared me from the start is that he would be here on a 1-year rental. You would give up assets. If you don't win at all, you're back to square one. And, would I like for fans to say, "Ha, you doubted it, you idiot, and we won the Super Bowl"? Great, there won't be a
Sign me up for
person
that.
than me.
Sign me up for that.
They win the Super Bowl this year, I probably won't remember 2024. So I don't care what happens that year. So, like by all means, get the guy, win it all, and it'd be great. But it is to me a little bit scary to say we're going to put all these resources into 1 year for a guy that, as I've discussed with others and we've talked about, it's the gauntlet to the Super Bowl is a lot tougher in the AFC than it is in the NFC. And it's been a while since Rodgers has been there.
You are putting yourself in a situation where there is only one acceptable outcome that doesn't leave you in the same exact spot that you are in right now. That is the way that Jets fans should be looking at this. I would be rooting for, once the trade is done and Aaron Rodgers is wearing whatever jersey number he's wearing for the New York Jets, I am the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan in the world. The trade compensation, I'll probably be mad about it if it's an overpay, but it will be in the back of my mind because now it's let's hit the ground running. Let's go. Let's try to win a Super Bowl, right? But again, if there's only one outcome where they are not in the exact same situation that they currently sit in here in the offseason of 2023. And that is if they are the team that Woody Johnson's up there. If it's Woody Johnson, it's Joe Douglas, it's Robert Saleh, and it's Aaron Rodgers up on a podium hoisting up a Lombardi trophy. Any other outcome, an AFC championship loss, a first-round playoff exit, a missing the playoffs, any of those outcomes leaves them in the exact same spot in 2023 where they are without a quarterback, and there are a lot of questions about what the long-term future of this team is. If they win a Super Bowl, the front office and the coaching staff is going to get all the time in the world to figure it out because they will have won the Super Bowl. But if they don't, they have, thanks to the Sacramento Kings the other day, the New York Jets have the longest playoff drought in the 4 professional major men's sports leagues. That's it. They have the longest playoff drought. So I'm here to tell you, I don't think Jets fans are going to be happy if they just make the playoffs and they bounce out in the first round because you're going to be in the same spot you were in, this offseason. And so again, there's one outcome where it's okay. That's the bet that the Jets are making. The Jets are making on the bet that they are going to be that one outcome. Because I'm sorry, I'll say it here on the show. I'll be public about it. I don't think Aaron Rodgers plays for the New York Jets in 2024. The man walked into this offseason, according to his own words, 90% retired. And now he's basically doing it to stick it to the Packers. Now, if he can stick it to the Packers by winning a Super Bowl, I'll sign up for that. But the guy who spent the last decade plus in the NFC not being able to make it to another Super Bowl in what was a cakewalk compared to what the AFC is right now. Tua, Burrow, Herbert, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar were more than likely back in Baltimore. Those are 6 teams you're going to have to go through. You don't think the Jags are going to be better next year with Trevor Lawrence?
You got the Jags surging, so it's going to be a much tougher battle to get to the Super. And someone said to me the other day, I couldn't believe it. They would be happy if Rodgers got us to the playoffs.
I'm sorry, no.
And I'm like, no. And then what? And then what? Then it's all over and you're back where you were now with fewer draft picks. I don't know how. Listen, if this were any other quarterback who maybe has 4, 5, 6 years left and they go to the playoffs, fine, you're happy with that. It's progress. The guy's going to be around for a while. You're heading in the right direction. Rodgers gets you to the playoffs and exits before a Super Bowl win, and it's all over. And then you're back to square one.
Which, by the way, everybody gather closer to whatever device you're using to listen to this podcast. But that's what Aaron Rodgers has done each of the last couple of years in Green Bay. The team flames out in the postseason. And you may say, oh, the Jets got a better roster. And I'd probably largely agree with you. I think the Jets are in a very good spot from a roster perspective. But you're asking me to put all my eggs in the basket of a 39, about to turn 40-year-old quarterback for one season in the harder conference where they are still the 3rd best team in their own division. I'm going to be rooting for it every week, Glenn. Every week, I'm going to be rooting for this team to win. But I'm just extremely skeptical of what kind of success they can truly have in 2023.
All right, so one thing that's going to be tied into that success they have in 2023 is going to be, and it's the reason why Jets fans have been laughing hysterically anytime they hear the Packers say, we got to get pick 13.
Pick 13. Good luck with that. You're not getting 13. Not happening.
Listen, and I'm when I do the podcasts that I do, I'm very careful not to take myself too seriously. I understand I get a lot of things wrong. I try not to be too I know this for a fact. I don't do a lot of that because I don't. I'm guessing like most people. However, a couple things this offseason that I've said that I am 100% sure. One is that the Jets would not be parting with pick 13, which is not going to happen. And the other is that pick 13 is not going to be used on a quarterback. It's not happening. They need a day one contributor now, not a developmental or not a guy who has to learn on the job while they're trying to save their jobs and then this playoff drought. What do you see happening with pick 13 other than a trade down? I could see a trade down, but let's not talk trade down. Let's
Okay.
talk guys who we think will be there at 13. There's the tackles. There's a million different options. What do you see as some of the better options for the Jets?
It's tough because they are probably in one of the worst spots on the board that I think you could design up from this context. What we would define as the Jets' big needs. And by the way, with going all in with Aaron Rodgers, they are in a win now window. So they would basically kind of be drafting for needs. They'd be trying to fill holes to try to get them over the hump. But when you compare what their major needs are and where the value is in this draft, it's really tough. I think we all agree that this team probably could use some safety help. I don't know if there's a round one safety. There might be. Brian Branch might be a round one safety, but at 13, that's a little high. The Jets need linebackers. I'm not really sold that there's a first-round linebacker amongst this group right now. There's some day two guys that I'd like. Would love to get Henry To'oTo'o wearing a Jets uniform next season. I think that guy would be a home run. But again, 13 feels a little rich. They don't need a wide receiver, right? That's one of the positions that might be of abundance there at 13. They don't really need that. So it's really tough. Some of the edge rushers. Bijan Robinson could fall to 13 based on the way the board falls out. But do we really think Joe Douglas is going to use 13 on a running back? So it gets a little weird. The tackles feel like the group that makes the most sense. They're the group that I circle in on and feel like at least one of the three of them are going to be there. One of the top three, meaning Broderick Jones, Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr., right? One of those three guys at least is going to be there when they pick at 13. I feel pretty confident in saying that. So that's probably the direction that I would lean in, but I don't like it. And I know Dylan loves to talk about the idea of the Jets trading out of 13, trading down and putting themselves in a better position, maybe getting some more draft picks. I get it. I understand the thought process because the value proposition doesn't add up at 13. It's just counter to everything we've seen Joe Douglas do in his tenure as the Jets general manager. He's the guy that trades up. He's not the guy that trades down. He's the guy that sneaks back into the first round. He's the guy that moves up to get Elijah Vera Tucker. He's the guy that moves up to get Jermaine Johnson. He's the guy that moves up in the top of the second round to get Breece Hall, right? That's the MO of Joe Douglas in this front office, not the guy that trades back and accumulates more picks. I wouldn't hate it. From a value perspective, it would make a ton of sense, but the context clues that I have don't tell me that that's something that feels very likely.
Yeah, I think one thing with Douglas, you're right, he does have the history of trading up, but I looked back, not that you have to look back that far. He has been here this long, but this is the fewest picks he's entered a draft with. So might he say, normally I have 8, 9, 10 picks. This year I got 6 or 7. Let's move back. So we'll see what they do there. I think one guy, and I've talked about him a few times this week, I think Darnell Wright. He's a guy that I really like that I thought might be there in round 2.
You're on the Darnell Wright bandwagon.
Saying this guy's a top 20, and I'm like, well, there goes my hopes that he'd be there at 42. And if DJ's saying he's top 20, he could be a guy worth taking. I mean, you watch the competition he played against. You watch him against Alabama. The guy was fantastic.
He was, and he was, part of the group that was tasked with trying to stop Will Anderson in that game against Alabama. So I get it. I can understand. Top 15 would be a little rich for me with Darnell Wright. Compared to the other guys that are available, I would have a tough time with that. I'm with you. He feels like a second round guy to me. He feels like a guy that would feel great at 42 and 43. Top 20, I would be a little skeptical of that, just personally.
Like I said,
I heard the same. I've seen the same noise that you've seen, right? It's out there that Darnell Wright is going to go higher than we all think, and Darnell Wright's going to be a first round player. I've seen it, and we've talked about it internally at TDN in our staff meeting. So I'm with you that the buzz is there. It's just I don't know. I'm not sure I'm sold just yet in that regard.
And I think the other thing that's worth talking about, you mentioned the position. I only started thinking about this a few weeks ago. I'm not saying it's likely. I wouldn't 100% rule out a receiver. You look at what's happening with receivers in today's game, and the top guys are making 25, 30 million a year. You've almost got to have a guy every year who's on a cheap deal, because God forbid you don't, you're paying 30 million for a number one. You're paying franchise quarterback money now for receivers.
If they trade Corey Davis as part of the Rodgers trade and they don't sign Odell Beckham Jr., I will move to this position that wide receiver is a potential outcome. But right now, with all the tea leaves that we have, Corey's still on the roster. OBJ might be coming in. That room is getting too crowded, right? Mecole Hardman, Al Lazard, Denzel Mims is still around. Like, that's too. We can't use 13 on a guy that's going to be in that mix. Like, that just doesn't feel like a good direction.
I do think Davis will be. We'll see, but I think he'll be in the Green Bay deal. But one guy, I want to ask you about him because I've said I think he might be the safest pick in this class. And I was listening to I think it was Move the Chains the other day, or Move the Sticks, whatever. Bucky Brooks, he mocked Osiris Torrance to the Jets at 13, which feels high.
Bucky,
but that dude,
I didn't hear this. Bucky, I like Osiris a lot, but he's a round 2 player.
Round 2, you think so?
He's a back half of round 1, round 2 player in my opinion. Yeah, I think
that's the highest I've seen him taken.
Because he's
to me, he was a trade back to 19, 20 and get.
Because he's an inside player. He's going to play guard.
Yeah.
All right. Are you taking a guard at 13? Like, I hate to do this, but are we taking guards at 13? Because if you want a guy on the interior, you want a guy that's going to play inside. I think they're a better. John Michael Schmitz would be a home run for the New York Jets. I mean, John Michael Schmitz is going to probably be drafted. Hear his name called the back half of round 1, if not early day 2. The center out of Minnesota. This guy, I got a chance to speak with him. Got a chance to see him play every day. This dude, it just goes out there in each and every practice, and he is on a path for destruction. He wants the contact. He wants the physicality. He's inviting it. It's just absurd, just the way that he goes out. Also got the chance to see Osiris Torrance. I like him a lot. I also like Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse. I would much rather have Matthew Bergeron than I would Osiris Torrance. But again, 13, a guard. Some people think that Skoronski's better off as a guard. A lot of people think that you're going to have to kick Skoronski inside. So if you're going to go that direction, I would rather take Skoronski and kick him inside and have the ability that in a pinch he can help me in the tackle spot than to take Osiris Torrance.
And in terms of round 2, a guy who, this is the problem I say every year. I need my team to have 50 picks, because you watch enough players, you fall in love with so many guys. You want them all. I
got players at positions that the Jets don't need that I want on the Jets. Like I want Julius Brents in a Jets uniform so bad, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
I want Joey Porter Jr., but it's just it ain't happening. However, round 2, will he be there in the early 40s? I don't think so. But Darnell Washington.
Oh, Darnell Washington. See, the tight end position is really fun, right? And the Jets took a tight end a year ago, and I'm not going to I love Jeremy Ruckert, but I'm not going to let Jeremy Ruckert stop me from drafting another tight end if it's a guy that the Jets really want to pound the table for and they love inside that building. You could talk to scouts from 6 different teams. You're going to get 6 different answers on who tight end 1 is in this draft class. That's how deep this class is. Darnell does everything. He can block. He can pass catch. He can be a part of both areas of your offense. And that's the important thing.
When you say he can block, like he can block like an O-lineman can block.
He's not just
tight
blocking.
Can block.
You're right. What Darnell Washington can do is another level of blocking. He is going out there looking for blocking, and he does it at a very high level. Yes. Thank you for the correction. I think it's very important, because I think other guys in this class can block. They can fill the role of a tight. No, Darnell Washington can block. He can go out there and he could be a difference maker on that side of the game for you and also catch the ball. But I'll tell you, I mean, to me, the guy that I love the most in this class from just an athletic profile perspective and getting a chance to watch him, I love Luke Musgrave, tight end out of Oregon State. Problem with him is the limited reps. Only played 2 games a year ago. Was hurt.
Sample size.
But I'll tell you, man, you see this guy in person. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. He just stands out and he just moves. A guy that big should not be able to move that fluidly at the position. But Darnell Washington would be a home run. Glenn, I hate to burst the bubble for you. I don't think he gets to 42 or 43. He might get his name called on night 1.
That's the thing. I think he's going to be a first round guy, because he literally gives you an extra O lineman when he's on the field, and the way he can impact the game. He's going to be a guy that I think we're going to look at in a few years and say, the teams made the mistake of the whole positional value argument. Like he's going to be a guy that other teams have to game plan for. He's going to be a game changer that's going to go in the late teens, early 20s, and there are going to be several guys that go ahead of him that teams are going to say, I wish I had Darnell Washington instead. Yeah,
Dalton Kincaid's also another name that I want to invoke here. I think he's a very important name. His blocking skills are okay. They're not Darnell Washington. No one's Darnell Washington in terms of blocking, but he can do enough to be able to be on the field for you and to be able to. It's not an effort problem with Dalton when it comes to blocking, and it's also a pretty good pass catcher too. Yeah, I mean, this group's wild in the best possible way. I mean, I didn't even mention Michael Mayer, who is, probably the general consensus tight end 1.
Number 1, yeah.
Tucker Kraft, Sam Laporta. I mean,
Laporta, I thought Laporta was going to come out last year, and I really liked him. The guy catches everything. He's
in an Iowa offense that's not known for being a very, pass-heavy offense. They don't have great quarterback play there at Iowa. But, yeah, the tight end group is – if the Jets didn't have 3 tight ends on their roster that I already liked, I would be campaigning for them to take a tight end early on day 2. But I just don't think it's going to be in the cards.
Yeah, and I look at Uzama and I like the person more than the player. Like I love what he brings to the locker room. You see the way he interacts with the fans, with his teammates, and you're like, you want a guy like that in your locker room. What he brings as a route runner and on offense isn't great. You could probably replace that with one of these guys, but you want those high character guys in the huddle too. So I don't want to see him go. Rucker, when he played last year, just I look at him and think, could you just have him play enough fullback for you to give him some use? He was blowing guys up when he lined up at fullback last year. If you said you're playing fullback for us this year, and then next year when we move on from Uzama, then you'll get more reps at tight end, but we're going to get a Washington or a Kincaid or someone like that in this year's class, and you'll slot in next year.
Effort off the charts from Jeremy Ruckert. The idea with him coming out of Ohio State and the reason why he fell to the third round was the idea that the Ohio State's offense does not use the tight ends very much in the passing game. He's just not used in that regard. So there wasn't a ton of reps on film that you could look at, but it does everything well. I mean, I think he's going to ultimately be the tight end one for this team if they don't go out and get somebody else. I think long-term, he's the guy that they're going to build around. And so I'll be fascinated to see. Glenn, we could sit here all day and I can go through every position and name 4 guys at that position that I would love to be on the Jets. But like you said, they don't have 50 picks. They've got like 8 or 9 of them, and they got to make the best out of the 8 or 9.
Yeah. I think one guy we haven't mentioned, and I'm mentioning him because I feel the same way about him that I did with Ruckert. Like I feel like Ruckert will be when all is said and done, he'll be a better pro than he was collegiate. I feel the same way about Will Mallory out of Miami. I feel like he didn't get enough opportunities. When I watched him against Pitt, he had a couple plays, catch and run down the sidelines. And I was like, this guy can move. Like this dude he's like receiver fast, and he's a tight end. They're splitting him out wide. He's catching deep balls, beating corners down the sideline. But you look at his numbers and they're not that great. And you're like, they haven't had the best quarterback play. And I just looked at him and thought, I was really anxious to see how he did at Indy. And I think he ran the fastest 40 among the tight ends. And I think that he's a guy who, once he gets a shot in the pros, people are going to think, oh, well, how did we miss on this guy?
Payne Durham's another guy that I'll invoke here in this conversation. Had a very good Senior Bowl. Really, I think, raised his draft stock. It's a great group. It's one of the 3 groups that I think is the deepest. I think the edge group is really good. The corner group is really good. And the tight end group is really good. There's value everywhere. You need a player at that position. You can find them on all 3 days of the draft. You really can. Those 3 positions really stand out to me. Not to diminish any of the other positions. There's great players across the board in this class. But those 3 positions I think are the deepest, and there's a lot of different scheme fits, right? With whatever you need for your team, I think there's a player that fits that mold in this year's class at those 3 spots.
Yeah, I think this is the year to be looking for a tight end and for corner. Like you said, there's a ton of them. And, where they go. I'm curious, as you mentioned it earlier about the Jets needing a safety. Not a super deep class. One of my favorite guys is sort of a projected day 3 UDFA. I don't know if he's not a big name. Well, you'll recognize the name, but there's no relation. But Jason Taylor II, the safety. I turn on Oklahoma State or Oregon State. He's making a play every single game, like big time plays, covering out of the ground, breaking passes up. You got a couple, 1 if not 2 game ending interceptions. Like the guy just makes play after play after play. And he gets no love. And listen, sometimes it happens. Some guys excel in college and the pro scouts look at them and they don't see the pro traits. I just look at them and see a guy who just constantly makes plays. But who are some of the safeties you think they might look at?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Branch is one that makes a ton of sense. I think he's got the versatility to play corner in a pinch as well. He could play in both spots. He's probably, if I had to guess, Brian Branch and I'm looking off camera because I have the TDN 100. I have our list of the safeties that made the top 100. If I had to guess first round safeties, Brian Branch and maybe Christopher Smith, maybe. I think, you look at Antonio Johnson out of Texas A&M, you look at Jordan Battle also out of Alabama. That's probably the group that feels like those are going to be the names that are going to be called pretty early, but it's not a group that inspires a ton of confidence. It's not a group that has a ton of value in it when you look at this group. And so for the Jets, the best thing for them is for Jordan Whitehead to have a better year 2 than he had year 1. I mean, that's the recipe for success for this team. That's what it boils down to.
And you're probably right in that, as I said earlier, they don't have a ton of picks. You can't address everything. Not everyone's going to be a starter. The numbers tell us probably half these guys, if you're lucky, only half these guys won't be starters. And the safety position is one where with a guy like Whitehead, they might say, listen, man, we just need you to step up because we don't have 20 picks. So we got to pick the places where we got nothing. At safety, we don't have nothing. We just have a guy who underperformed. So we need you to step it up and we're not going to take one of these guys. Like I said, you can look at UDFAs, and everyone loves when those guys pan out, but you can't go in relying on those guys. So yeah, it's another position, linebacker, safety, tackle. These are the big ones for the Jets. If Corey gets traded and because OBJ, they're saying maybe Baltimore showing some interest there.
Yeah, that would make some sense. I think in a lot of ways. I think right now, if I had to take a, and I hate boxing a team into this direction, but I think tackle with 13 makes a ton of sense. And I think right now, since they have 2 seconds, this is the way that I would look at it. I think a wide receiver and a linebacker is the way that I would approach when I compare the value with the needs, with what this team needs to do. That would be the direction that I would go in. And I think it's telling too, to just close the safety conversation. They could have gotten out of Jordan Whitehead's contract. They would have had to eat some dead money, but they could have gotten out of it this offseason and given themselves some the cap flexibility. They didn't do that, right? They chose to stick with Jordan moving forward. So they clearly believe that he can get back to the player that they saw when they evaluated him as a free agent entering the 2022-23 season. So I think that's an important thing to mention as well.
Yep. I think he's back, and we will be back next week to talk some more stuff, and hopefully some movement. Hopefully, I think on the free agent front, I think they're going to be pretty quiet until after the draft, unless we see them get a guy like Ben Jones and OBJ, these guys who don't count against the comp pick formula. There are some guys out there, but we'll talk about whoever's left on the board then. But good doing this again this week, Chris. We'll be back next week, talk more Jets. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and be sure to check us out same time next week. Have a good one, Jets fans.